name is Ali Muhammad, and this class that you're in is called Freedom 101. It's basically for the purpose of teaching civics to the community and also for you to learn a process that I have labeled as self-administered reparations. And what we mean by that is economically, historically, civically, you will learn aspects that you can carry out as an individual to repair the damage that has been put on us because of ignorance and a loss of information. Freedom 101, again, works on behalf of this building because there's a group of us who are working to purchase this building for the purpose of educating our children with the information that you're learning now and setting up an educational paradigm that will be of benefit for us in the future, because what we have presently is not of benefit for us. And of course, many of us are having legal law problems all over the place. And in general, not just our people, but everybody has been duped when it comes to history and law in America. So what we're going to talk about today, I titled this subject, Benjamin Banneker and the Black Right, Founders of the American Republic. And the reason why I titled it that, because Benjamin Banneker, the man we know of as Benjamin Banneker, plays a very important role in the history of the foundation of this country. And attached to him is a lot of history that exposes information that you need to know in order to have a proper lens of what you're looking at when you're looking at America historically. And also, because of the movement of law and the changes that have taken place, particularly in the 20th century around the 1920s and 30s, what was set up in America was an experiment. And what we need to learn from it is more information about what that is about, and then the practical way to deal with our everyday concerns. Okay? So, Benjamin Banneker. Most of us have learned the flawed history about this man from our poor social studies and histories classes. We learned that he was an African-American astronomer, the first African-American astronomer, and that there was a Frenchman named Pierre L'Enfant who basically was designing the city of Washington, D.C., that would be the capital, and that L'Enfant was fired by George Washington, and this black man memorized the plans of L'Enfant and then laid out and surveyed the 10 square mile district of Washington, D.C. And that became, of course, the capital of this nation. All of that information is very wrong. What we have to understand is that the design of the American Republic and the physical design of the structure of the American Republic is all based on ancient African science, or ancient Moorish science, or ancient Islamic science, whatever terms that you want to use that denote what this is all about. It's all attached to that history. And one of the most important things that we have to learn is what was here before the founding of the United States of America. What was here in operation? Who were the people? What kind of systems and laws did they live by? And then what you will learn is that these were your ancestors, and the template for what was set up here by Caucasians was taken from us. Okay? And we have always played an integral role, although we don't know that. And we have been taught about slavery in a paradigm of believing that we are free. And we are not free. So like I always like to say, we are slaves looking back on slavery. And during slavery, there are people who were free then, and now there are people who are trying to make an abolitionist movement. I'm one of them. But we don't know that we are slaves. So it's hard to teach somebody. Like Harriet said, if they had known that they were slaves, then, you know, we could free them. Okay, so I guess we can go to the screen and start out with some very important facts on indigenous history. Are you going to, can you turn it to, okay, you got it? Okay, yes, sir, you got it. All right, so what I'm going to start out with is some history on the eastern seaboard of what the people pictured themselves as and who were these people and how it led into what we know of as the American Republic. Now I'm using words here. Often you hear the word democracy. The word democracy is not the original word that was in the Constitution, and we have to figure out, when did this country become a democracy, and what is a democracy as opposed to a republic? And why is that even important to your understanding of jurisprudence and law and civics right now? Okay? Because a republic is what is guaranteed to each of the states by the federal government in this Constitution, Article 4 of the Constitution. And according to the general definition of the word republic, a republic is a system of government that derives its power from the people. In a republic, the document of freedom does not grant you rights or give you privileges. It can only guarantee rights that you already have, which means that the job of the representatives in government is to protect the guaranteed rights of the people. So you don't get your rights from the Constitution. You had them before the Constitution. But in a democracy, you get privileges. You get granted rights like permission to drive, a license. That's for a person who does not know who they are, period, and doesn't understand the fundamental concepts of government. So this is where we are right now. But we're there because there's a break in our consciousness. And the only way you can break someone's consciousness is break their history, break their lineage. That's the only way you can do it. Because once they don't know who they are, then you can tell them who they are. That means that you become their God. Okay? So, I have a picture here. It's from a book called America BC. Now, what we have learned about Native America is completely false, especially ancient Native America. And the peoples that we are shown currently, who they are calling Native Americans or Indians, are not the original indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. They're not. What do I mean by indigenous? Indigenous means that which occurs by nature. Indigenous deals with a scientific term and not a geographical region. I'll say that again. It does not deal with a geographical region. Indigenous means the people who are by nature the original people of the planet, or whatever place that you go on the planet. And how you determine who is the original people is by genetics, DNA, blood type. That's how you determine who is indigenous. Okay? That which occurs by nature, which means that creation is our sustenance. And the other people are grafted, which means they don't get sustenance from creation. In fact, they attack it. So melanoma and skin cancer amongst Caucasians is a sign that something is very wrong with them in their process of their creation, not being racist and just being scientific. Because you were taught that you were the sons and daughters of Ham, and you were cursed. So we have to tell the truth. All right. So the first gentleman, this gentleman would have lived around the New England area. Now, if you look at him, you see his little fuzzy head, woolly head, so-called broad nose and big lips. And the book talks about the history of these people called Druids in Europe. And the Druids were the original founders of the civilizations of England, what we're calling Ireland, Scotland, and all these other places. And this is a picture of a Druid, and the script of the Druid, which is called Ogam, is also found all over New England, Massachusetts, Maine, New York, Philadelphia. Okay? So this actual picture is from Searsamount, Maine, and now is in a place called Sturbridge Village Museum in Massachusetts. It depicts a Druid wearing a chaplet of oak leaves and acorn, executed in the style of a Celtic artist in Ireland. Now, something very interesting about this area, the people of that area, the native people, call themselves Abenaki or Abenaki. Okay? And, excuse me? A is spelled various ways, but one way you can spell it is A-B-A-N-A-K-I, Abenaki or Wabanaki. And this same area is the place where many of the archaeologists have found hieroglyphics that match almost identical to Egyptian hieroglyphics. We went over that in some of the classes earlier. And this is what the people drew their faces as. This is what they look like. That looked like me and you. Okay? And keep that word Wabanaki down, because the Wabanaki, or Abenaki, was another name for the Delaware, who were here when William Penn came. So-called Delaware, that's what they named it. They were in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and what we're calling Delaware now. Okay? So this is what we look like, our ancestors. All right? Next slide. Another picture. Okay? Now, something very interesting is happening here, because I know that, again, we haven't been taught the truth, but of course we are dealing with that now. And what we're going to find out is that the people who lived here look like us, lived our ancient culture that we have learned is African culture in America, and of course, again, are the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. Okay, and I want to read directly from this slide about this particular face. Because this slide, if I remember correctly, is a dedication to the god Baal, which was an ancient Sumerian or Phoenician deity, which is where you get the names Bay and El from, that most of the Moors use. Okay? And the caption on the picture talks about his lock-like afro hair and the radiant energy that symbolizes this deity. But of course, again, the deity with the cornrow afro look and the radiant energy definitely looks like, to me, looks like us. Okay? All right. So what do these people call themselves? Because there's a lot of communication about that. Are we Anasazi? Are we Cherokee? Are we Iroquois? Are we Yamasee? Where did the people come from, and what name did they use for themselves? Okay, now this is a comparison between the alphabet that's also made in America BC. It's called a Libyan alphabet, which is a form of ancient Arabic, but the symbols or letters are different, okay? And it says Libyan alphabet signs appearing on the tablet from Orient, New York, compared with other Libyan alphabets. They always told us that the Indians didn't have languages. I guess that the lexicographers wanted to hide who was actually the people by hiding their languages. The Libyan text of the alphabet is given on page 270 with a translation. The phonetic rendering of the lower section of the tablet, left to right, is Debet Tamir Was, vessel from Egyptian dominions, and the top line reads Ta Depet, this ship. But if you look at the second line right here, Debet Tamir Was, the word that they use for Egyptian is Tamir, because Egypt was called Tamore. Ta meaning nation, and More meaning the people. So this is where you get the ancient term Moors, that the Romans and the so-called various other Caucasian types of people used to call our people all over Africa, which means black. And you find this in America, amongst these same people. So we don't have to ask a question about who we are, okay? All right. A few more points, because I want to go right into Benjamin Banneker, but before I do, I have to make these points. This is something called a Davenport Stele. We talked about it a lot. It's a calendar, an ancient calendar found in Iowa, and it has 3 different types of script. The top has what we call Demotic or Heretic script, which is ancient Egyptian, or Tamore, ancient Moorish script. The second has Iberian Punic, which is a form of Hebrew. And the third is the Libyan Arabic script. And this calendar, based on how it was designed and made, is the ancient Egyptian calendar, which was based on a certain study of astronomy, a certain knowledge of the heavens and the earth, okay, which Benjamin Banneker had. which the Caucasians didn't have, which is why he was the one doing the design for the construction of Washington, D.C., because Washington, D.C. is laid out on ancient African or ancient Moorish cosmology. Okay? All right. And we went over this before, but this is going to become more important as we go into our subject on jurisprudence and history. This is the alabaster egg of the cartouche of the pharaoh Tutankhamun found in Idaho. Now, what is Tutankhamun's things doing in Idaho and the Smithsonian didn't bring them? Our ancestors brought them here. And this particular dynasty in Egypt, which is the 18th dynasty, which was called Amorna dynasty, when you study ancient Egypt, you'll find that this dynasty brought back an ancient study of cosmology. Now, why I keep talking about cosmology is because we're talking about jurisprudence. We're going to talk about jurisprudence. And the reason why we are in the condition that we're in is we don't know how to govern ourselves. Our self-individual and our self-collective. And we live by a certain spiritual science, which we have all but lost. Okay? So I'm mentioning this particular dynasty of people because they were the reinitiators of this information in Egypt, after they had lost it in Egypt. All right. This is another inscription found. And this is interesting because it's going to lead right into our subject again, on our people introducing these people to certain information. This is Jesus ben Maria, Jesus the son of Mary, a petroglyph recorded by Professors Heiser and Baumhoff, and this is from America, BC as well, from a site discovered by Professor Julian Stewart at his site 41 in Inyo County, California. Although the inscription refers to Jesus, the phrase son of Mary is found in several surahs of the Quran, so the text may be Muslim. A Christian might be expected to have written Mary was the mother of Jesus or Jesus was the son of God. This text, deciphered by Fell and confirmed by competent Arab scholars, has been dismissed by one of the archaeological journal as an obvious attempt by Fell to appeal to the religious. So basically what they're saying is, Barry Fell is the man who wrote this book that I pulled some of this information from. And what he has done is he has proven that the people of Northern and West Africa and Central Africa were the true founders of civilization in the North, Central, and South Americas. No one came over the Bering Strait. The Bering Strait was an invention, and we have documented where the invention came in a script called Alum Ulum script that was placed amongst the Delaware Indians by a Caucasian, which is why most of our people believe they came from the Bering Strait. All right. I'm going to lead right into the subject matter. This is another text that we've used before. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because I want to show that these Masons that came over here were initiated by our black ancestors on this ground. Okay? And we'll show who we are and why, you know, this subject is so dealt with so delicately. Abbreviated version of the Ten Commandments written in the form of Phoenician or early Hebrew script showing Greek influence. It is inscribed by scraping off the dark desert varnish to disclose the lighter bedrock beneath, and has changed little, if any, during the past century. It is located at Los Lunas near Albuquerque, New Mexico, and has been the object of study by the late Professor Robert Pfeiffer. So here in New Mexico, you also have these ancient Phoenician writings, which have Greek influence because we are the founders of the Greek language, showing the Ten Commandments. Okay? And of course, we've seen this before, but this point I'm bringing it up again because it has to do with the design of Philadelphia and D.C. and Banneker. This is the Fairmount Waterworks that when it was just under construction in the early 1800s. And in the backdrop, you can see what the Art Museum is sitting on right now is or was a step pyramid. Okay? And when we get to find out who the Lenape are, Nanticoke Moors, we're going to find out why these pyramids were here. Okay. I guess I can do that now. We can come off of the slide for a second, and I can go over some information in regards to that, and then we come back. Okay. Now, the reason why, again, I titled the subject Benjamin Banneker and the Black Right, Founders of the American Republic, is because, indeed, our ancestors taught the Europeans government. Again, although we have not had this information. Now, what do you mean our ancestors taught these people government? Which ancestors are you talking about? Some of the people who I just identified. The Wabanaki Confederacy is still in existence, and the people in it are not the original founders of it. Okay? Now, I'm going to read a few things for you to verify some of this history that deals with the initiation of Caucasians. Now, the Bible and Quran, as we have talked about before, deal with the legacy of an ancient people who are called Israel. Israel, the word Israel comes from the Egyptian word Osiris, or Sare, Isra. That is the etymology and the origin of the word. It's found in two places, the Meron Ptah stele, which is a stele made in the 19th and 20th dynasties of Egypt, and in the pyramid text. But I want to read you some information from the people who were governing right prior to the Constitution under the Articles of Confederation. Everybody know what the Articles of Confederation is? Anybody know? Can somebody tell me what the Articles of Confederation are? Anybody know? Articles of Confederation. Okay. It was the document of government prior to the Constitution that was changed in order to make the present Constitution. It was enacted and operated from 1781 to 1786. And there were 8 presidents in that time period prior to George Washington. And a lot of people are saying that they were black, but they weren't. They were Irish, and they were a part of a secret society called the Rosicrucians. And the Rosicrucians were the Germans who came over into America during the time period that Pennsylvania was being settled by William Penn, and they settled right up in Germantown. This is where you get the history of Germantown in Pennsylvania from. But I'm bringing that up because one of the presidents, whose name was Elias Boudinot, wrote a book called A Star in the West. And he talked about the native people who were here and how they were the lost tribes of Israel. And he talked about how they had the Bible in America prior to the European. Now this becomes very important because the so-called founding fathers who were under the Articles of Confederation have a secret connection to the society of people. Now, you know, we don't talk about secret societies and conspiracies. You hear about the Illuminati and all this stuff has become very popular. And people are just going all over the place with secret societies. But secret societies do rule your everyday affairs. Okay? But you have never known that there were black secret societies. You just hear about Rockefeller and Rothschild. But you haven't learned about your secret societies that have had drastic impact on planetary changes. But this is what we're going to read about. Okay? And it has everything to do with the information about this lost tribes of Israel history and who the people were who taught the Rosicrucian Irish people who made the Declaration of Independence, founded the Articles of Confederation, and then later had their government taken over by another group of white people from England, George Washington being the head of that. All right? Okay. This is his quote. Again, the book is A Star in the West by Elias Boudinot. And his quote is, he's talking about the Lenape, or the Nanticoke Moors. It is said amongst their principal of beloved men that they have it handed down from their ancestors that the book which the white people have was once theirs. Now, the book that they're talking about is the Bible. Now, again, I'm telling you, the Bible is the history of the most ancient lineage on earth. which is this Moorish or Israelite history, a black history, or Israel, meaning the people of Osiris. Okay? It goes all the way back to ancient Nubia. All right? That while they had it, they prospered exceedingly. Talking about the history of the Bible. And the reason why I'm bringing this up also is because there was a European, Charles Thomson, who was the Secretary of Congress from 1774 to 1786. And he translated for the first time the original Septuagint, which is the Old Testament, right here in Philadelphia. And that translation that he has is completely different from your King James Version. There are specific verses that are missing. And he also knew that this lineage of people that he was translating the text about and that he had been initiated into, right in Delaware, were giving him information about a particular group of people who were here, who are being talked about by Mr. Elias Boudinot, the third president under the Articles of Confederation. So I'm trying to give you some context. That while they had it, they prospered exceedingly, but that the white people bought it from them and learned many things from it, while the natives lost their credit. Now, when did that happen? Most people do not know that the first time that the Old Testament was written down was in Egypt, 285 BC, under a pharaoh called Ptolemy Philadelphus. Now, it's interesting that you get this place named Philadelphia. 285 BC was the first time that the Bible was written down. Prior to that, there was no Bible except oral traditions. I know you don't believe that because you taught that Moses received the 5 books. That's a lie. You can verify it right in the Bible because he didn't write about his own death, which is recorded in Deuteronomy. Hebrew was not even a language when the biblical scholars say that Moses lived. And when we find out who Moses really was, then we understand where and why there's so much confusion. Because it's all related to this Moorish Israelite history going all the way back to Kemet. Am I confusing anyone? Okay? So the first time the Bible was written down is 285 BC under Ptolemy Philadelphus. And this was for the purpose of learning about a particular people in Egypt who had had their cartouches and history wiped out. And they are called the Amarna dynasty, 18th dynasty. And you find them mentioned in the Quran under Amran, the family of Amran, 3rd surah. Okay? And their lineage, as is recorded in the Bible and Quran, is Noah, or Nu. After the so-called climatic destructions on earth, then it leads to Abraham and the seed of Abraham. Okay? Now these people are real people. Right in Cairo Museum, if you are smart enough to get the information, which we have it in the book Reparations Equals War, they have Abraham's body. It is the best mummified and preserved body on earth. It has been mummified for 3,500 years. We'll go into detail further. Okay. So the white people bought it off them and learned many things from it while the Indians lost their credit. Offended the Great Spirit and suffered exceedingly from the neighboring nations, that the Great Spirit took pity on them and directed them to this country. So now what is being narrated is the movement of what I just showed you or talked about, the people of North Africa, the people of Kemet or Egypt, Tamaray, moving into West Africa, and then moving further into North, South, and Central America. And if you look at the time period of the largest expeditions, they were taking place during the 2 time periods. This period of Israel with the Phoenicians, and then the period we know of as Carthage. Same people though, different names. All right. That on their way they came to a great river which they could not pass when God dried up the waters and they passed over dry shod. They also say that their forefathers were possessed of an extraordinary divine spirit by which they foretold future events. and controlled the common course of nature, and this they transmitted to their offspring on condition of their obeying the sacred laws. That they did by these means bring down showers of plenty on the beloved people, but that this power, for a long time past, had been ceased. Now this is from A Star in the West. I'm going to read one more quote from him. This is Elias Boudinot again. He wrote another book called The Second Advent during the 1800s. And before we just quote, I want to show you why he was writing these books. Take a picture of America and what was going on. Washington was under attack by the British and the natives as America was in the War of 1812 against the indigenous people and the British. America had just participated in the Barbary Wars on the coast of West and North Africa in heated battles with the Moors. And they sing the song, from the shores of Montezuma, no, from the banks of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. What is that song about? That's the song that the Marines sing to show that they had conquered from Mexico to northern Africa, the empire of the Moors, or the Muslims, the ancient people. Indigenous peoples like Tecumseh and his brother the Prophet posed a major problem as they were warring with the whites and creating national fervor amongst the indigenous populations, the so-called Indians and Maroons, of whom Boudinot was connecting to Israel. All right? There were slave revolts en masse, and the capital was in financial and physical flames doing all this communication that I'm talking about. Okay, this is what he says about these people. Boudinot, from A Star in the West. What could possibly bring greater declarative glory to God, or tend more easily to affect and rouse the nations of the earth with a deeper sense of certainty of the prophetic declarations of the Holy Scriptures, and thus call their attention to the truth of divine revelation, than a full discovery that these wandering nations of natives are the long-lost tribes of Israel, but kept under the special protection of Almighty God? They would be convinced that his, check the code language, all-seeing eye had been opened upon them in their wanderings, under all their suffering, and that he had never forsaken them, but had shown his watchful providence over them, and that in the latter day it should come to pass that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains. Okay, so that's his communication about these particular people. Now the particular people he's talking about are the Nanticoke Moors, or Lenape, or like we noted before, Abenaki, which is the linguistic root of Banaki Springs, where you find the Banneker family, right in Maryland. Okay? So this history of these people is very ancient, although they wouldn't like to say so. Now, these people had three branches of government. The three branches of government were the Turtle Clan, the Wolf Clan, and let's see, there was one more. Turtle was the oldest, the Wolf, and the Turkey Clan. All of these worked as branches of government. All right? The three main branches of government. Now, Charles Thompson, a white boy from Ireland, the Secretary of Congress from 1774 to 1786 under the Articles of Association and under the Articles of Confederation, was the secretary for the Lenape. They initiated him and gave him a name. And I want to read that for you when that happened. And this gentleman spoke some very interesting words about what was going on during that time period. But this is his initiation. And you can get this from the Pennsylvania Magazine of History and Biography. And it's a letter from Charles Thompson to Samuel Rose, Easton, PA, July 28, 1757. Okay? Pennsylvania Magazine of History and Biography, volume 20, pages 421 to 422. Okay? As a young man, Thompson was adopted into the Delaware Nation in 1757. The Delaware called him Wak Wulamund, or man who tells the truth. Thompson also witnessed the Delaware and Mohawk condolence ceremony 2 decades before the American independence. Check this out. It was Thompson who faithfully recorded the ceremony bestowing an Iroquois name on John Hancock. Now, a lot of things that they do is they mix these names up because these weren't the original names of the people, Iroquois, Delaware, etc. We told you who they were. One example of the legacy his interest in Native America left us in ancient documents. Years after the American Revolution, Benjamin Rush asked Thompson to write a history of the American Revolution, but Thompson declined, saying this. Listen to this. I will not, for I shall contradict all histories of the great events of the Revolution. Now, this is the man who was the Secretary of Congress saying, if I write down what I know, I'm going to contradict everything that y'all got. And show by my account of men, motives, and measures that we are wholly indebted to Providence for its successful issue. Which means that there's got to be an act of God for allowing for us to begin to change these histories this quick and make the changes that we're making. Let the world admire the supposed wisdom and valor of our great men. Perhaps they may adopt the qualities that have been ascribed to them, and thus good be done. I shall not undeceive future generations. So this is him in the book Autobiography of Benjamin Rush, page 155 by George Corner, C-O-R-N-E-R. Okay, so basically what this man is saying, first of all, he was amongst these people. They gave him a name. They initiated him. He took their Bible, translated it from Hebrew and Greek into English, and made it the first translation of the Septuagint in America. Okay? And he also said that he's not going to write down anything because he knew that these people were switching these histories up. Now, this man is also the designer of the seals of government. On the money. Now, if you go to your Department of State website, they give the whole history of him designing these seals. The seals came in 1782. But notice that the United States government only uses this little seal with the eagle on it. Congress has passed resolutions up to 4 times to have the die cut for this seal, but they never did it until it was put on the $1 bill, Series A $1 bill in 1935. First time in American history. Now, what does that mean, brother? What are you telling me about, brother? Why is all the symbolism on the money anyway? What does it mean? Why would a country need 2 seals? And what is being communicated to you that we have not picked up? All right. We're going to go back to the slides. Benjamin Banneker. That's how you spell his name correctly. Banneker. The offspring of the Ka, or spirit. Now, I know we've learned all kinds of histories about him, but his almanacs tell who he was. A lot of people say his grandmother was white, and she was from Wales, and she came over and she purchased his grandfather, whose name was Banneker, who was a Moorish prince, and she freed him from slavery, and they started their little farm. That's a lie. How do we know that it's a lie? First of all, he talked about his grandparents in his own almanacs. So let's take his words, and let's not take anybody else's words. What does he have to say about that? About the racial origin of his history? Well, let's read it, because this is important. Now, Mr. Banneker had 6 almanacs, and he also had a farmer's almanac. Why is this like this? This is not copied correctly. All right, let me pull one out. He had 6 almanacs. And this gentleman did an enormous amount of work in founding the design for this country. But I want to read a few things about his grandmother that he placed in his almanac, if I could find it in his text. Go on, and I'll come back to it. is the name of his grandmother. And she was from Wales. Now, anybody who knows history during the time period that she lived, Great Britain was in a civil war because of the Moors, the black Africans, being in Wales, in the place that we call Wales, which is the southeast of Great Britain. Now, look at himself. This is a quote from Benjamin Banneker, Silvio A. Bedini. He says, and this is him commenting to Thomas Jefferson, I freely and cheerfully acknowledge that I'm of the African race. And it is a sense of the most profound gratitude to the supreme ruler of the universe. So not only does he say black, he say I'm of the deepest dye, which means I'm really black. Okay? And I want to get to the part that talks about his grandmother very quickly. Okay, here it is. This is from his almanac. This is from his Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia almanac and ephemeris. And this is the commentator commenting the introduction. Baltimore, August 20th, 1791. A free black is a who was born in Baltimore County. His father and his mother was the daughter of Banneker and Molly Walsh. Okay? Let's go further. This is a book called The Discovery and Archaeological Excavation of the Benjamin Banneker Homestead in Baltimore County, Maryland. Now, in Baltimore County, Maryland, or during that time period, only landowners could or would pay taxes. Women, particularly white women, were not landowners and did not pay taxes. But what this book proves is that James Banneker and his wife, which were, you know, his grandparents, another name that he went by, both were taxpayers. And if I could read the comment very quickly, directly from the history of Banneker. Okay. A lot of this information I'm going to have to come back to. I'll come back to that. But in particular, I just wanted to cover the fact that Banneker's lineage was all black. All right? Now let's go quickly into parts of the subject that we want to go to. Now, this man is given credit for the design of Washington, D.C. Now, why is the design of Washington, D.C. so important? What did I do with that slide that quick? Why is the design of this city so important? What did I do with the slide that quick? Oh, here it is right here. Okay. All right, let's put it up. Let's put it up. Let's look right into it. And what we're going to find is something that's very, very powerful. This is from the book that we wrote, Benjamin Banneker, A True Founding Father. Now, what you're looking at here is the triangle that denotes the three most important areas in Philadelphia and in Pennsylvania. Washington, D.C., that deal with particular positions of government, places where government is operated, the executive and the legislative in particular. Okay? Now, what we have to also remember is that Washington, D.C. was not the first capital. New York was a capital, but during the time that the Constitution was written, guess where the capital was? Right here. Washington, D.C. was not even designed yet. I'm telling you that he designed it in the 1790s. And this is 1787. So what district are they talking about in this document? Raise a question. That's all. If this was the capital, they're talking about this district. first, before D.C., because D.C. wasn't built yet. They're going to lay out the survey. This survey was already laid out, and this is why I'm showing you that both cities have a construct of a triangle that are exactly the same, where particular places of governing systems operate. Okay? All right. So if you look up top, you see the White House is where the pyramid was, or the art museum. Okay? Next you see the Washington Monument, where the Washington Monument would be, or 30th Street Station, which is where all the commerce comes in and out of the city, and the post office. It's put there for a reason. Commerce is the exchange of energy and communication. All right? And this is laid out by some serious scientists. And the Capitol building, or Congress, is in the exact same place as City Hall is. Okay? Now, City Hall has something very interesting at it. Only two places in America you can go, and you walk in the place where the legislation is passed, you will walk across the zodiac. Now, what is the symbolism? What's the symbolism of the zodiac being right in the middle of City Hall in Philadelphia, where all of the laws for the country were made? Prior to it being City Hall, it was the waterworks station. Okay? But, of course, it was later developed into City Hall. What is the significance? Go to D.C., you find the same thing. Now, another significant thing about these two places is these are the only two places in the world where you have the zodiac reversed. What do I mean by reversed? If you drew a circle and you drew the zodiac down, it would have a natural progression to it. Okay? You would go from Aries to Taurus to Gemini to Cancer to Leo to Virgo to Libra to Sagittarius to, Scorpio to Sagittarius to Capricorn to Aquarius to Pisces. But because the Earth is spinning in the eastwardly direction, if you were to draw it on a piece of paper, you would have to draw that going counterclockwise. But if you go to D.C. and you go to Philadelphia, you'll see it's in a clockwise direction. Okay? Now, we're going to make each other minor astronomers today. If you go outside tonight and you look up in the sky, say at about 9:30, you're going to see a big constellation called Orion. It has these three little stars that make a belt. Okay? And right above that, you're going to see Taurus, Gemini, etc. These various constellations. Excuse me, you won't see that. You'll see Aquarius and Pisces. All right? So, and we're moving into Aries. But the significant thing about that is that if you want to understand time, you don't need a watch, because the watch is based on the zodiac. This is why you have 12 on it and the progressions. All right? So the real watch is the movements of the heavens and the earth. Okay? I'm going to be very clear. So if you understand outside and all day long or all night long, you just see the zodiacs moving across the horizon from the east to the west, setting. And there will be 12 major ones. All right? The only other place in the world where you have a reverse zodiac is in Egypt, at a temple called Tenterra. All right? And the reason why the zodiac is reversed is because of what is communicating about time and motion. Now, you might not understand that right now, but we're going to get to it. Why are these things positioned like they are? The reason why they are positioned like they are is because they are showing some information about astronomy and cosmology. What information is that, brother? Market Street would represent the belt of the zodiac. If you were to draw it out. We're going to draw this down later so you can understand it. And this plane or inclination or hypotenuse would represent the movement of the sun around the center of the universe. Which means if I drew a little graph and showed you a circle, a flat circle, the sun doesn't go straight around the circle, it's going like this. Okay? Now, what does this have to do with anything? What does this got to do with anything? Why are you talking about this, brother? Because Benjamin Banneker, being a well-informed initiate that he was, designed the foundational structures of Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. based on ancient astronomy for a very particular purpose, to leave a communication and a message to us. What message is that? Okay, first of all, if you took your protractor out and measured that angle, the angle would be 33.3 degrees. And the 33rd degree is what all Scottish Rite and Knight Templars strive to get, to Shrine Dome. And what do you learn when you get your Shriner's degree? You learn about the original study, which is black people and mathematics. And they put this in their ritual manuals. So Benjamin Banneker laid out these places based on particular stars and based on ancient cosmology or ancient astronomy, which shows the exact geometric structure of the universe, which is why that G is in the middle of the protractor and the compass. Because in order to learn how to govern yourself, you have to learn creation. Because it's from creation that you can extract the absolute laws of nature and the absolute laws of creation in order to pattern your social universe after. What do I mean by social universe? I mean society. If you do not pattern your society after that extract, then what you will get is chaos. All right? And this brother knew that science and knew that history. All right, take that down. This is what I was talking about just now. If you give a construct of the universe and I showed you what it looked like, this is what it would look like. Now, our ancients knew this information. This would be the zodiac. And you see I have Scorpio, Leo, Taurus, and Aquarius. Now notice I have the AD date, and notice I have another date. That is the original calendar date, which means that it is not 2006 AD. Or it is not 5,766 time period based on what the Jews write down. Because they wrote those calendars down to deceive you about time. Okay? And I wish we had time to go into that aspect, because that's important. But this construct is based on a knowledge of the physical universe, which means the universe is not everything. The universe is creation inside of space. All right? Now, you learn about this information in various places, but we don't see it. In the Bible, in the book of Ezekiel, you learn about the what? Wheel. And it had 4 parts to it. The cherubim had 4 parts. What? The head of an eagle, the head of an ox, the head of a man, and what was the last one? The head of a lion. Lion is Leo. Taurus is the ox. Scorpio is represented by the eagle, and Aquarius is represented by the man. So you're learning this ancient astronomy is a part of the Israelite or Moorish history, but it's hidden. Okay? So it all comes back. So the real year is not 2006. Okay? All right. Pull that down. This is the temple of Dendera in Egypt. It's kind of bluff, but you can see some of it. All right? And what you'll find is that the signs for the zodiac move in a clockwise direction. And it's based on the 25,000 year, 920 year cycle of the sun around the center of the universe. That's how we really count time in years. And every time the cycle ends, we start back. 25,920. And the beginning of the calendar always started in Virgo, which represents the woman. And Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia were laid out on the constellation Virgo. Okay? All right. So Benjamin Banneker was dealing with some heavy stuff. But let's go right back for a second, and then we can go into some other information. Because I'm not explaining a lot of this stuff in detail because it takes time. That's a real course. These 3 points also represented something in the human body. The 3 glands that control every function of your body, in your brain. They're called the pineal, the hypothalamus, and the pituitary. It's called the divine triangle. And they control how you're able to see me right now, all of your nervous and endocrine functions, the endocrine system being what people are talking about is the chakras and the movement of hormones throughout the body to communicate to every cell. Pituitary gland. All of that is controlled by those 3 glands that are in the 3rd ventricle of your brain. Okay? So that has great significance to why the triangle has such importance and why it was a symbol or symbolic of something related to astronomy and related to the human body. Okay? All right, so let's come off of these slides for a second and get some lights in here so we can learn some other information. All right. I know we're moving kind of fast. Now, Mr. Banneker has also been displaced or misplaced with his contribution to the government. And the reason why is because he was under another name. Now, I know you're not going to believe me right now. I don't expect you to believe me, but I'll go into further detail this in the next class. The reason why you don't know a lot about Mr. Banneker until a certain time period is because he's under another name, and that other name is Benjamin Franklin. Now, you say, wait a minute, boy, wait a minute, you're going crazy. Now, go back to the subject of secret societies. And I'm telling you that this is an experiment. And when I go over the history the next week, you're going to get a clear understanding of it. The man we know of, Benjamin Franklin, used 9 aliases during his whole lifetime because he was trying to hide his identity. And you notice, after I go over the lecture, the beginning of the lecture next week, they came into contact with all the same people. Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, John Adams, Benjamin Rush, and they never came into contact with each other. Why is that? They both had an intricate connection to the natives. Okay? And again, the design of this country is based on ancient African science. What African science are you talking about, brother? Because you keep saying that. Okay, July 4th, 1776. Why was that date chosen? And after we go through that, we can go into the jurisprudence, okay? What was the significance of July the 4th? Why that date as opposed to any other date? What is July 4th astronomically? Let's read it. Because it's based on the flag. Now, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said a black man from the South designed the flag. The original flag, 13 stars in a circle, 13 red and white stripes. Red, white, and blue, which are the code colors for masonry, the 3 degrees of masonry. White being the first, red being the second, blue being the master mason. All right. When we showed you the slides, we talked about Sirius. Now, Sirius is a star system that's at the center of the universe. We have known this amongst our people for long time periods. The Dogon talk about it. The Egyptians, our ancestors, based the calendar on Sirius because they knew the cosmology, the structure of the universe. Okay, But let's check this out. The significance of serious and ancient traditions surrounding government plays an important role in the establishment of the government of the United States of America and in our own establishment of our government that is materializing. The only reason that the people who rule unjustly have been able to rule unjustly is that they were dealing with a superior wisdom or supreme deception. It is the initiation of that wisdom that will free us. Okay, listen to this. From a book called Know Your America, a suggested course in Americanism prepared and distributed by the American Legion, the context and meaning of the establishment and design of the American flag is given. It states, quote, question 1, by what authority was our national flag established? Answer, authorized by Continental Congress. Now, who did they tell you designed the flag? Betsy Ross sold it. Who designed it? Do they say? They say they had a committee of people. Thomas Jefferson was one of them. Benjamin Franklin was one of them. To design the flag, right? All right. Question, and Francis Hopkinson. Question 2, quote the exact language of the original flag law. Answer, resolve that the flag of the United States be 13 stripes, alternate red and white, that the Union be 13 stars, white in a blue field, representing a new constellation. What are you talking about? What new constellation? He's talking about an order of information. Okay? What is so important about that order of information? And the number 13. Go back to astronomy. Let's go, astrologists. July 4th, when you're counting astronomy, is in what zodiac sign? Cancer. The ancient sign for Cancer is Kepler, which means the self-created one. And if you go from the first day of Cancer to the date July the 4th, you'll get 13 days into Cancer, or 13 degrees. The number 13. Now, on July 4th, 1776, John Hancock and Charles Thompson were the ones who signed the Declaration of Independence, not Thomas Jefferson. They put their signatures on it. Now remember, John Hancock and Charles Thompson were the ones who got initiated into the Nanticoke, or Lenape. So they signed they put their signatures on the Declaration. Thus, we hear the term put your John Hancock on something, your signature. So look at, this is from the book, The Secret Architecture of Our Nation's Capital. On that day, July 4th, Congress agreed the wording of the Declaration, and it was signed by the President of Congress, John Hancock, who was a Mason, and the Secretary of Congress, Charles Thompson. He goes on to say, the Mason who first signed the Declaration of Independence would have been aware of the particular significance of July 4th as a cosmic event. Now, what is going on that makes it a cosmic event? On this date, if you were to be able to step off the earth for a second and look down on the whole universe, the earth, the sun, and the Sirius constellation will all be in one line, which manifests a certain type of spiritual force, which was known amongst these people, or at least they were taught by somebody, which is why they chose that date. Which means when you make a decision, a mental decision, to affect other things, you have to know something about astronomy. Thus, on your birth charts, astrologists are looking at the planets to try to figure out different aspects of your consciousness. That's an ancient science. We don't use it no more. We just do stuff, sloppy. But the significance of this is those who have that information consciously have more brain power. I'm going to say that again. Those who have that information consciously have more brain power. You cannot outthink them. Why? Why? All right, let's deal with this. Go back to your brain for a second. And we're going to go over this again. Your brain is controlled by 3 glands that we just mentioned. All right? Let me get this up. Your brain is controlled by 3 glands. The hypothalamus, pineal hypothalamus and pituitary. It's going to take a minute for that to come on. Now, we want to deal with warfare? Let's deal like this. Where does the power for you to think come from? Because we're going to deal with astronomy for a second and then go right into when this stuff comes up. Now, our ancients taught correct cosmology because they knew and understood real science. The power for you to transmit electrical energy in your brain does not begin in your brain. Your brain is a receiver and a transmitter. Okay? Our ancients taught that, I guess he can focus that. Our ancients taught that Sirius, the Sirius constellation, was the center of the physical universe. It's called the dog star. You find it mentioned in the Quran. Now, Benjamin Banneker, as we've recorded in his almanacs and recorded in his book, knew that the Sirius constellation had more than one star in it, prior to any European. They just found out in the 1900s by going to the Dogon tribe and looking at the inscriptions that they were drawn in dirt. This is with them with telescopes and everything. They couldn't see. It's placed in the Quran in the plural form, Shira, which means a plural is called a broken plural. That's the name for Sirius in the Quran. Banneker also knew this information. Okay? And our ancients thought that that was the physical center of the universe. Okay? Now, if that's the physical center of the universe, then we understand why they're putting out Sirius satellite radio and all these things, communication. Then all of the wave energetic transformations that are taking place in the physical universe are taking place from this point. Okay? All of it. And we have to learn a little bit more about creation in order to understand this. But again, creation is not the universe is everywhere. We live in a little bubble, a little egg called a universe. And all of our energy is coming from the outside, in real darkness. Okay? Real blackness. And that blackness is represented in your body by a term called melanin. That's why you're black. You are black because you are picking up wave transmissions from the center of creation. And you're picking up more than anybody else. Which means you have more power, potentially. Okay? But your conscious mind needs more information. Now again, going back to these people, they had it. And by them having it, they were able to create a so-called republic that has been in existence for 200 some odd years. Now, if you had it, what could you do? We're going to see. But getting back to the original point, if you want to outthink the people who are outthinking you, you need to know how they're outthinking you. And you need to consciously know more about the governing system of creation and how it affects your physical body before you start making your social decisions of how to govern yourselves. Now this government, the three branches, are based on that ancient system, that ancient design, that ancient paradigm. And let me pull this up real quick so we can start getting into it. Let me find it. Hold on one second, brother. Let's go here first. All right, let's start there. Now you see that seal all the time. New World Order, Novus Ordo Seclorum. Nuit Coeptis. May God favor my undertaking. And then you see this eye. What eye is that? That is called the Eye of Heru. Okay? In the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, it was represented by the letter R, which we call Re. Sun, Re, etc. And Re, or the I of Re, represented what? God. Or at least the power of God. And this seal was designed by Charles Thompson after he was initiated amongst the Nanticoke Moors in 1782. This is what he got from them. That's why it was never cut or used by the United States government until they had no government. And since 1933, they haven't had a government. They had a bunch of corporations running everything because the people don't have any power. So you can't have a government where the people don't have any power. You have a concentration camp. Okay? Going back to my other point. Let me pull this up. Let me find it first. Okay, here we go, right here. That's not it. What I'm looking for is a design for the human body. And if I can find it, endocrine system, I'll get it. Okay, there we go. Let me make that bigger so you can see it. Take up the whole page. All right. Now this is a course on government. And the brother is showing us the human body. All right. Right in your head, you have this gland called a pineal gland. Okay? This gland is the gland that picks up on all wave formations in the universe. And again, the universal signal is coming from Sirius. And what that universal signal is, or wave formation is what manifests in your body as melanin. So without black, you can't see any colors. So you need that wave transformation, and in this gland is where the beginning stages of melanin takes place. Once that gland is not picking up the signal, you are what we call dead. Okay? Now notice, a few weeks ago, when Bambada did a little experiment with Brother Merkaba, we put our hands over his head, alternating. After we tried to pick him up the first time, we couldn't. But after we did that, we had more power. Which shows that the crown of your head is receiving energy. Okay? All right. This gland picks up the wave formation and transmits it into neurotransmitters. Neurons. Neurotransmitters. Nur. Al-Nur. Al-Nur is the light. Nur-an is the light from heaven. Light is a wave and a particle. Okay? The more neurons you have, the more information you can pick up on cosmically. The more information you can store, the quicker your understanding is. Okay? Hypothalamus connects the endocrine system, which is hormones, and the neurotransmitters. Then you have the pituitary gland, which communicates all hormones to every part of your body. Now, go back to government. Pineal. The pineal gland in the triangle is the place where in Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia, you would have the Congress. What does Congress do? Writes or makes laws. What does the pineal gland do? Makes law. Spatial dimension. Hypothalamus gland connects the nervous system and endocrine system. And when your body is under attack, it is the hypothalamus that acts. It is in the same place or design that, if you were to look at the triangle, that the White House is in. And the executive government does what? Protects the body or the government. All right? Pituitary deals with all commerce or movement of what? Hormones. Hormones are communicated to every cell of your body to give them brain instructions. So if you say I hate myself, then that instruction is communicated by hormones and neurotransmitters to every cell of your body. Okay? So that's the triangle. And from this three brain triangle is communicated to each part of the body that is a part of the endocrine system. The thyroid, the thymus, the pancreas, the adrenals, and the sexual organs. Okay? All right. We can turn the lights on. Now, again, the people who designed the government, legislative, judicial, and executive branch, got this information from us. And they wanted to make a republic that would last forever. So let's talk about that republic. We don't have to take a break. We're going to jump right into this information. Are you in a republic right now? No, you are not. You are in a democracy. As Malcolm said, democratis, which means the rule of the devil. So what do you need to know? You need to know real jurisprudence. What is real jurisprudence, brother? Let's see. All right. Now, this is after the Dred Scott case. The Dred Scott case is what most people like to quote and say the black man does not have any rights that the white man is bound to respect. But yet, this is a black woman going into the state of Virginia to file her citizenship papers. And what did she do? She went to the county of Petersburg, which is in the state of Virginia, and got the county clerk's seal to authenticate her status. After Dred Scott. She's black. I'm going to go to another one that's okay. And you can read it. All right. Another one. This is from 1854. I believe this is 1854. Okay, this man's name is Samuel Fox. He's a citizen, capital C, of the United States of America. And he is described as sight, African complexion, black woolly hair. He was an American seaman. So why wasn't he a slave? And we're going to bring this up to speed so we get a better understanding of it. All right? I like to go through these all the time. Let's see. And this is one of my favorites. Because when we talk about the authentication process, if I can make this bigger, let's see. I need to make this bigger. If I can't make it bigger here, I'll show it on the slide. The top?
Always click there, right there. Just click and hold it and move it over to you. Other side, no, wrong one.
You know what? I have it on the slide. And let me see if I have another copy of this. Hold on. I have another one right here. Okay, it's going to come up. But the reason why I want to show this one is because it shows and talks about the authentication process. To authenticate something means to make a positive statement in law. It is basically an affirmation or affidavit. And you are stating to the jurisdiction who you are. Because if you do not, they will determine by assumption or by false illegal contracts. And it's going to come up in a second. So the reason why we are not in a republic now is because the people have lost information. Even if it's by deceit, still lost it. All right, this is kind of light. I don't know if I can make this bigger. Okay, undo that. Let me make this bigger. All right, now I'm going to go down on this. And basically, again, I want to read this. Now, John Jones was an attorney, and he was amongst the so-called Cherokee. Again, we always mention him. And he basically presented and filed in the office of the clerk of the court of the county and state aforesaid a certificate duly authenticated of freedom. So when we talk about jurisprudence and status, status is, who are you? You cannot be a 14th Amendment citizen. You can turn that, we can turn this back on. I'm going to turn this off. You cannot be a 14th Amendment citizen. Why not? You cannot be a 14th Amendment citizen. To be a 14th Amendment citizen means that you become responsible for the public debt obligation. It means that you are now operating from civil rights. Now, civil rights is what they teach us about all the time. You do not need to be operating in a civil rights zone, because civil rights are privileges and grants from the government from people who do not know the republic. To be a free person is for you to know it and put it on record in the county by affidavit. Now, what will happen when you do that? When you do that, you become responsible for your own rights and responsibilities, which means you don't have to pay into Social Security. You don't have to pay into federal taxes. You won't be responsible like other people to being a bonded or fugitive slave. And if you ever have to go to court, you can go and deal with real law as opposed to codes, regulations, and ordinances. Contract. Okay? But the bigger part of this deals with your political, natural, and personal rights. By political rights, we mean rights by the document of freedom that's supposed to be the document of the country. Okay? Again, the Constitution does not give you rights. The government is only here to guarantee your rights. So you have natural rights. Then you have personal rights that cannot be violated along with those natural rights. But the whole thing that we have been arguing over is the 3/5 clause. And we, with 3/5, they treated us bad because they made us 3/5. Okay? I'm going to close out in just a few. But the 3/5 clause was put in for more than just so-called black people. And this is what we want to go over next week, to show you how many white, Irish, and other slaves there were. Because the reason this has been perpetuated over on our heads is because we were, the majority of those people. Because we were under attack. We're always under attack. But we have relegated that to ourselves to that position because we don't understand that the history of this document. And what we want to show is that we can create a quiet revolution. People won't even know what happened. If you get a hold to some of this information, do the changes, before you know it, the thing will be done. You'll be in what you want to be in. Freedom. Financial freedom. Okay? And financial protections. Okay, so I want to close out with a few points. Now, the summary of what we talked about today deals with where the people got their concepts and their government. We're going to cover it a little bit more next week. But what I wanted to show you today was that these people got their information from us. And further on that point, William Penn, when he came here, met a chief of the Nanticoke Moors, or Lenape, named Tamenend. Now, all over the place, you'll see this handshake taking place in symbols, Fraternal Order of Police. You'll find it on the IDs of the Moorish Science Temple, that handshake. That handshake represents these people who came with William Penn from Europe. But who were they? Quakers. Society of Friends, Rosicrucians. And they were coming from Europe with their teacher, a man named George Fox. George Fox was an initiate in England of these Moors who were attacking Great Britain. And the Islamic influence on George Fox is what gave rise to these Rosicrucians coming over into the United States of America and founding their first place or province, which they were granted, called Philadelphia. And when you read this book, you'll get that information. It's all in this book, okay? It details that information. But the reason why I'm bringing it up is because the people in government already know that. They already know that. And if anybody in America want to change anything, they're going to have to deal with our history. And our leaders are going to have to deal with what effective changes can we bring about civically and economically to change our condition. And the first thing we have to deal with is our status, which should not be documented by birth certificate at all. It should be authenticated like these black people were doing. And forever. We've been dealing with problems so long with no answers. If a simple answer comes, we don't even want to take the step. It seems like it's crazy. You mean that's all you have to do in order to do these other things? Yeah. Stop giving your babies birth certificates. That is what consciously, psychically creates slavery for them. And they begin to be cut off from divine protection. Period. Once you start making deals with the devil, there is no God for your children. I'm going to say that again. Once you start making deals of inferiority with the devil, there is no God for your children. The Quran says that Allah will not help a person until they help themselves. What does that mean? God, not even God is going to help me until I help myself? I mean, it must mean I have God power. So, what we wanted to say today is that our ancestors played a major part in the construction of the concepts. It wasn't Plato's Republic. It was the Abenaki. It was Benjamin Banneker. It was others who we haven't mentioned today, who took part in being here and running and operating their governments and invited white people in. Now, of course, we have learned a great lesson about giving our secret information to white people. We should never make that mistake again. Keep your information amongst yourself and amongst black people that's willing to protect it. Okay? So we're pretty much done. If we have questions, we'll start right there. Any questions? Yes, sir.
The second Agdam by Elias Boudinot.
The star, a star in the west. Elias Boudinot. Boudinot. Elias Boudinot, a star in the west. And he also wrote a book called The Second Advent. Right. And he was one of the presidents under the Articles of Confederation. And again, what this information also proves is that we need to be completely re-educated. It's not going to take place in a place like this. This is for you to get some information so you can go home and get the DVDs from Brother Noah and all this stuff and then start learning, you know, at home. But we're going to have to be sat in class to be taught by each other in order to get through. Because the misconceptions in religion, the misconceptions in history, the misconceptions in civics, all need to be dealt with in a dialogue fashion so we can administer self-reparations. The first religion. The first religion, as far as I understand it, is a study of cosmology or creation, a study of the laws of nature, and the study of the human being, extracting the knowledge from that to learn to govern yourself. And of course, I mentioned the Amarna dynasty, who reinitiated certain ancient scientific concepts, who became known as the founders of monotheism. Monotheism is the highest level of reason and science in acknowledgement to your God or primal, primal power. And they reinitiated that, and that term Amir or Amor or Amran is found in the Quran. And one thing that I didn't mention in the lecture is that the 50,000 year cycle that we were taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, which is mentioned in the Quran, is also related to the design of Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia, intricately, and both serve as geographic clocks for that time period. So it shows a transmission of information down to various people all the way up to the Revolutionary era. And, oh yes, sir. And that information has been handed down into black secret societies. So we have amongst our people who have protected and preserved information who have handed it down. But as far as I understand, that is the first religion. And it's interesting that you found this information communicated in the Quran like you do, because in my estimation, with a correct translation of the Quran, you have all of the spiritual precepts of the indigenous people preserved in the book. Of course, right now you have the Arab people who have taken over the scripture, so they have done what they have done. But it's our job to translate that material for ourselves. Now, did I answer your question? Okay. Maybe? And when you say religion, do you mean the social way that you live, the spiritual way that you live?
I thought you said Israel.
Israel. I mentioned Israel because Israel is a term, the etymology goes back to ancient Nubia in Egypt, to Osiris, which is a people. And what I was trying to show you was the lineage of the people. The lineage meaning the preservation of the genetics amongst the people.
Do you know what other aliens' names or what Manigus was besides?
I have it right here. Let me pull it up because I didn't read it because I wanted to read it last week. But we got to get out of here real quick. But I'm gonna read a few of them. Silas Dogood. Silas Dogood, he wrote under the New England Current. Kaelia Shortface. Martha Careful. American Weekly Mercury. And what was happening is he would write in various newsprints under alias names. Busybody, American Weekly Mercury. Anthony Afterwit, Pennsylvania Gazette. Alice Addertongue, Pennsylvania Gazette. Richard Saunders, Poor Richard's Almanac. Polly Baker, Benevolence, Letters in the London Newspaper. So those were some of them. Timothy Turnstone, Harry Meanwell. So you can see the communication. He was using antidotes to write under. Those were some of them that he wrote under. So we're going to go over some of that next week. But I have in my hand right here something very, very important. The Handbook for Special Agents. And this is from the Department of Treasury, Internal Revenue Service. Criminal Investigation Intelligence Division, Internal Revenue Service. Listen to this. It says, agents, our tax system is based on individual self-assessment and voluntary compliance. The material contained in this handbook is confidential in character. It must not, under any circumstance, be made available to persons outside the service. Mr. Mortimer Kaplan, Internal Revenue Service Commissioner. And of course, we deal with the IRS in this class very often. And brother gave me the pamphlet. I'm going to make it available the next time so you can have this so that we can begin to show and have knowledge of how we can get out of these contracts with these people. Okay?
Read that last page.
The last page. This one right here, New York Times? New York Times, Tuesday, March 30th, 1999. On the occasion of the 38th anniversary of the accession to the throne of His Majesty King Hassan II, the National U.S. Arab Chamber of Commerce takes pride in the bipartisan demonstration of support by undersigned U.S. members of Congress and endorsed by J. Dennis Hastert, Speaker of the House of Representatives, in recognition of the enduring friendship and economic cooperation which binds the United States of America with the Kingdom of Morocco, the first country to recognize American independence. That's very important because we do use and talk about the Treaty of Marrakesh, or the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, 1787, and cite the ancient black Moors who were in America in various parts who used these treaties in order to ensure their protections. Okay? So that's very, 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 very important, and it goes even further into the secret of the what is called the ancient Egyptian Arabic order of the Nobles of the Mystic Shrine, which was the first black shrine dome initiated in America. And there were various people who were part of that, but the reason why it's important is because it deals with the two books of law, Bible and Quran, and it's related to this treaty as far as information. The United States and Morocco shared an uninterrupted period of friendship, starting with Morocco being the first nation to recognize the independence of the United States of America and to have signed in 1787 a treaty of friendship and cooperation, the first of its kind concluded by the young republic. The United States and Morocco continue to share common values of liberty, democracy, and peace, as well as common interests and goals in global security, particularly in Africa, the Middle East, and the Mediterranean region. And it's interesting in books, the almanacs, he mentions the Sultan, Muhammad ibn Abdullah, who was the emperor of the Moorish empires of Western Africa when they first made the treaty. And again, that goes into the history of him knowing the two. The New York Times, Tuesday, March 30th, 1999. So we got that. So, yes, sir.
Is there anywhere where anybody has moved from the book to use anything with their laws from the coming forth by day, or the book of the dead, besides the glorious Quran and the Bible?
Well, let me say something about that very quickly. The first recording of the Book of the Dead was in a papyrus called the Papyrus of Ani. The Papyrus of Ani, which recorded the ancient laws of Ma'at and recorded the glorious Book of the Dead, was first printed into existence on the papyrus of the Amarna dynasty. And it was E.A. Wallace Budge, who was the first white man who went and translated this papyrus, this ancient papyrus, which we're calling the Book of the Coming Forth by Day. But I'm mentioning that to say that the information that has been passed down as far as our sacred laws coming from that Amarna dynasty, we find that it's passed down chain for chain for chain all the way down to Muhammad. So the reason why I made the Quran, I said it is a retainer of all the spiritual laws when we know the correct Arabic, is because this information was put for the first time in a book in that form. So if we get down to using that material or one book and get our own translations correct, we'll be able to preserve it. And it's also in this treaty, Article 21 in the original Arabic, it states that the Sharia, which is the laws of the Quran, is the law of correspondence between these ancient Moors or Muslims and the United States of America. Okay? So I mean, we go further into that, and it's very, very powerful. We just have to get the information out and learn how to, utilize it in our studies and our practicality. I know they're ready to get out of here. Any more questions? Any more questions? Okay, so we close for the day. Sorry we took so long.